Hi, and welcome to Meta Stories. From the moment news broke that a submersible trying to get to the wreck of the Titanic was missing, rescuers had to confront several terrifying scenarios. Could the 5 people on board be trapped at the bottom of the ocean, with little option but to wait as their limited oxygen supply dwindled? Or had there been some kind of catastrophic accident, leaving no chance that they could be saved? After days of desperate searching, the U.S. Coast Guard in Boston called a press conference to confirm a sad reality. Multiple pieces of debris, found on the ocean floor, suggested the sub had imploded and everyone on board had died. As investigators try to understand what went wrong, many are questioning why the vessel, known as the Titan, was there in the first place. The company behind the experimental sub had reportedly been warned about safety concerns but still took passengers to the depths of the North Atlantic. More than a century ago, the sinking of the Titanic served as a wake-up call for the maritime sector. The question now is whether lessons will be learned in the wake of another tragedy. The desperate search for the missing submersible. The Titan lost contact with its mother ship, the Polar Prince, 1 hour and 45 minutes into its dive on Sunday, June 18th. But for reasons not yet explained, it would be 8 hours before the United States Coast Guard was alerted to its disappearance. An international search operation was quickly stood up, with U.S. and Canadian aircraft deployed to scour the area from the air and to drop sonar buoys into the waters below. Rescuers were faced with extraordinary challenges from the outset. The Titanic wreck is located in a remote part of the ocean, hundreds of kilometers away from the coasts of both the U.S. and Canada, and is nearly 4 kilometers below the surface. First of all, it's freezing cold. 2. It's pitch black, explained retired Navy submarine captain David Marquette. The pressure is 380 times what we feel here. It's an Empire State Building of lead sitting on top of you. Few vessels are able to withstand those sorts of conditions. Remotely operated vehicles, ROVs, equipped with cameras, which could be deployed deep into the ocean, were prioritized as a way of providing visibility to crews on the surface. Just days into the search, many dared to hope there could be signs of life after underwater noises were detected in the search area. 2 U.S. media outlets cited internal government documents describing the sounds as banging. It led to frenzied speculation that there could be survivors inside the vessel, trying to signal for help. With estimates suggesting that the sub had 96 hours worth of breathable oxygen when it started its journey, a grim countdown served as the backdrop to discussions about any possible rescue. The Coast Guard has since said the noises were not related. The same phenomenon occurred in 2017, during the search for a missing Argentine submarine, the San Juan, which is now thought to have imploded. Again, rescuers thought they might have detected distress signals from the submarine's crew, but later concluded the sounds could have come from the ocean or marine life. While authorities cannot say exactly when the Titan is believed to have been lost, the Wall Street Journal is reporting that a top-secret military system detected what could have been the implosion shortly after the sub's disappearance. The only saving grace about that is that it would have been immediate, rescue expert David Mearns told Sky News. Literally in milliseconds, and the men would have had no idea what was happening. 5 wealthy adventurers dubbed the depths of the Atlantic. On dry land, the saga turned into a social media debate about the folly of the super-rich. But for the loved ones of the 5 on board the submersible, each minute of the last week has ticked away with unimaginable horror. Until their fate was confirmed, families lived in fear that somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean, the 5 men were bolted into a vessel that they could not escape from without outside help. Stockton Rush, 61, was the CEO of OceanGate and charged his 4 passengers $250,000 United States dollars, $374,000, for an adventure to the bottom of the sea. On board, he was joined by Shahzada Dawood, a businessman from one of Pakistan's richest families, and his 19-year-old son Sulaiman. Sulaiman's aunt Asmay Dawood told NBC News that her nephew wasn't very up for the expedition and felt terrified about the trip, but was eager to please his dad. Also on board was Paul-Henri Nargeolet, a former French Navy diver who earned the nickname Mr. Titanic for his repeated visits to the shipwreck. The 5th person on board was 58-year-old British adventurer Hamish Harding, who ran a Dubai-based private jet dealership. He trekked to the South Pole multiple times and holds 3 Guinness World Records, including the longest time spent at the deepest part of the ocean. Of his journey to the bottom of the Mariana Trench in 2021, Harding said he was realistic about the risks he was taking with his life. "The only problem is that there is no other sub that is capable of going down there to rescue you," he said at the time. "If something goes wrong, you are not coming back." One of Harding's close friends, Jannicke Mickelson, said she was upset the mission was being branded as a UK billionaire going for a sightseeing trip to the Titanic. She said expeditions were also for scientific research. These types of expeditions are very expensive, and we need people like Hamish who can pay and sponsor such an expedition but also take the risk of joining such an expedition with his expertise, she said. Why wealthy adventurers pay big money to see the Titanic? More than a century after the Titanic plunged to the bottom of the sea, the luxury passenger liner still captures public imagination. Named after the Titans of Greek mythology, the British ship struck an iceberg and sank on April 15, 1912, killing 1,500 passengers. The maritime tragedy is an enduring cultural touchstone that has inspired countless books, films, podcasts, and documentaries. But only a rare few have the money, the risk appetite, and the special access to participate in a deep-sea voyage to the wreckage site. Ocean Gate's tours of the ruins, which began after successful expeditions in 2021 and 2022, are an extreme form of tourism not for the faint of heart. Exclusivity appeared to be part of the company's selling point to clients, who were encouraged to take part in an 8-day, once-in-a-lifetime experience. Although a specific number is difficult to know, the company says it is believed that fewer than 200 people have seen the wreck in person, far fewer than have flown in space or climbed Mount Everest. What I've seen with the ultra-rich, money is no object when it comes to experiences. They want something they'll never forget. Nick D'Annunzio, the owner of Terra, Inc., a public relations firm specializing in special events, told CNN. But shipwreck tourism is not without its critics. In 2003, Ed Kamuta, an enthusiast and president of the Titanic Historical Society, told the Associated Press that human activity needed to be limited at the wreck. He said the site should be a simple maritime memorial and left alone. Scientists have also previously warned that human visitors were loving the Titanic to death. Those who had taken part in expert expeditions in 2003 told the New York Times the surrounding recovery site was littered with beer and soda bottles as well as cargo nets and chains. Scientists had previously raised the alarm about Titan's safety. In happier times, Stockton Rush proudly invited observers onto the Titan for a look, or even a dive, on his innovative vessel. CBS reporter David Pogue documented his trip on board the sub last year. An experimental submersible vessel that has not been approved or certified by any regulatory body, and could result in physical injury, disability, emotional trauma, or death, he read from a waiver he signed ahead of the journey. Mr. Rush showed off features that appeared to take the journalist by surprise, including components described as off-the-shelf, lights from Camper World, and a game controller used to control the Titan. The story also said an earlier attempt to reach the Titanic was abandoned after the sub got lost for 2.5 hours. In the days since the sub's disappearance, a number of reports emerged about safety concerns previously raised about Ocean Gate. It's been revealed a former employee had alleged he was fired after raising questions about testing. He and Ocean Gate sued each other and the case was settled on undisclosed terms. It has also been reported that Marine Technology Society, a group of ocean engineers, technologists, policymakers and educators, wrote a letter in 2018 voicing fears about Ocean Gate's experimental approach. Additionally, questions have been asked about why the Titan wasn't classed or certified. Most major marine operators in the U.S. require that chartered vessels are classed by an independent group, such as the American Bureau of Shipping, ABS. But Ocean Gate wrote in a blog post in 2019 that while the company met standards where they apply, innovation often falls outside of the existing industry paradigm. Alfred McLaren, a retired U.S. Navy captain and friend of Mr. Nargeolet, said the hull was made from carbon fiber and titanium, two materials that respond differently to temperature and pressure. Maybe you get a good seal on land. But then as soon as you get in the water, particularly salt water, and you start cycling that thing, it was a catastrophe. It was bound to happen. Former merchant mariner Sal Mercogliano said that one of the ironies of this whole situation is that 2 years after the Titanic sank in 1912, all the major shipping nations of the world came together to overhaul maritime safety and avoid another tragedy of its scale. They promulgate what's called the Safety of Life at Sea Convention that says, hey, you need lifeboats, you need rescue material, you need a 24-hour radio. All these provisions that we take for granted today, that are inspected and double-checked, he said. Mr. Mercogliano has suggested modern changes could be prompted by the Titan's demise. I'm wondering a year or two from now if we write a new amendment to the Safety of Life at Sea Convention that includes the operation of submersibles in international waters. A lot of countries have those rules in place for their coast, for their areas. But this is a very niche market, as everyone likes to say. Some in the industry are scathing in their criticism of OceanGate's approach. James Cameron, the director of the film Titanic, who is also an experienced deep-sea explorer, said the design of the Titan was fundamentally flawed. It's completely inappropriate for a vessel that sees external pressure, he told CNN about the use of carbon fiber composites. We always understood that this was the wrong material for submersible hulls because with each pressure cycle, you can have progressive damage. So it's quite insidious because you may have a number of successful dives, which is what happened here, and then have it fail later. Mr. Cameron said it was unconscionable to take passengers onto the Titan without having the vessel certified. I think there's a great, almost surreal irony here, which is Titanic sank because the captain took it full steam into an ice field at night, on a moonless night with very poor visibility after he had been repeatedly warned. He also queried the response to the sub's disappearance, arguing he strongly suspected from the beginning that the Titan had experienced a catastrophic failure. This entire week has just felt like a prolonged and nightmarish charade where people are running around talking about banging noises and talking about oxygen and all this other stuff, and the Coast Guard is out with airplanes, he told the BBC. I knew that sub was sitting exactly underneath its last known depth and position. That's exactly where they found it. Explorer Richard Weiss, who was a friend of Mr. Harding's, said his community would be learning what it could from what had happened. When the Challenger went up and had that explosion, could you have guessed it was the O-rings? He asked, referring to the space shuttle disaster which killed 7 crew members in 1986. I believe in the evolution of humans. And I think in the exploration community, yes, there's definitely grief. But, you know, next week, people will detach themselves emotionally from the individuals and sort of assess the situation. With a disaster, if you don't come out of that disaster or accident, knowing more and being better as a society, then you have failed. A quest for answers. While any hope of a rescue mission has evaporated, authorities will continue to search the area where the sub-debris was found in an attempt to understand what went wrong. Canada's Transportation Safety Board, TSB, has announced an investigation, given the Polar Prince was Canadian-flagged. A team of TSB investigators is traveling to St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, to gather information, conduct interviews, and assess the occurrence, it said in a statement. In the coming days, we will coordinate our activities with other agencies involved. The search for the Titan captivated global attention and highlighted serious safety concerns within the adventure tourism industry. The agonizing wait for the families of those on board may be over, but their search for answers has likely just begun. Thanks for watching, and until next time, keep exploring.